How you doing?
Oh my God. I mean, are we going straight into it, or is there like an intro? Or you
Yeah.
okay?
No.
It's all usable. It's oh God. I mean, I was thinking a lot about how much I want to say, and part of me is like, burn the house down. What does it matter? And another part's like, well, you don't want to get in trouble. And
Mm-hmm.
but I think that at first I was like, oh, it's fine. I hated that job anyway. I was miserable every day. And then about a week or two later, I was like, I think the like getting laid off is sucks. I mean, it just sucks. But I think that other than like losing your health insurance and your income, just like I don't know, the existential dread. I think the feeling of shame, even though it's not, performance based. I hadn't expected that, and it hit me quite late. And so it's been up and down. But I will say, like, I've also noticed days of, I'm trying to figure out what to do some days, and it's like probably sleeping too much sometimes. But I'm like, there's times of joy again, and I don't have Sunday scaries. There's not the dread of doing a job I hate where I'm really making no difference at all. And so I'm grateful for that. I think my biggest concern right now is what is next to look like. And, it's very, it's really difficult because tech salaries are seductive. Let's be honest. Like there is amount of like, the golden handcuffs are real, even though we're not executive level. And so I feel like I'm really at a crossroads of like, do I push back into this or do I completely retrain into something else? That was kind of a long answer, but
There's no such thing as a short answer with this topic. So it's.
And how are you doing too, by the way?
Well, I'm on in about a week, it'll be 11 months since I got laid off. And I can't get anyone's attention. Even being submitted internally by people who work there, not even getting a recruiter calling. And there could be lots of reasons for that. Could be that they have to post it, but they've already chosen someone internal. Could be that they posted it and then budget something, so it had to be pulled. But then I see it still posted on LinkedIn, reposted, 100 people applied, whatever. So there's very little that I can control. I mean, there's nothing I can control. There's very little I can influence. And kind of where we're at financially, having the tech salary is going to make climbing back out of the hole faster. So I don't know what's next either. Like, a friend of mine and I, he was talking to someone else and they got to a point in the conversation and the other person was like, should we just open a sandwich shop? And then he and I started talking about this and we were like, what about if it was a cafe? And he was like, a cat cafe? And I was like, no, those are overdone. And we came up with a guinea pig cafe. And we'd have the little tubes running everywhere. So you couldn't interact with them directly, but you could see them. And so that's the new plan. Good night, everybody.
I kind of love it. I would go to your guinea pig cafe.
Yeah. And it's really an experiment. We're going to treat it like a something, like a guinea pig.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's only a good idea because of the dumb pun, really.
You know what? You just got to run with it sometimes.
But pretty sure that's what the bank will back us.
I think so.
On that. But it's funny,
it is
right?
Funny.
Give us money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you having any traction at all with anything?
I am.
Or
I'm
where are you at
having
with things?
some, and it's obviously mostly rejections. But and then I'll get surprised and I'll get a recruiter call and it's like, okay. And then we don't click at all. And then I just got a second interview for something. And I was like, okay. I was all the way through a final process and, 3 hours, portfolio reviews, all the things. And, I had a referral and a recommendation and I didn't get that job. And it was that, I think that was around the time that I went like, oh my God, layoffs. And it just feels like you can do everything right and it's still not your job. And, and then, right after that, there was layoffs at Meta, and I'm seeing content designers getting laid off that I used to work with. And I know they're great. I mean, all these people are great. That's not the issue, but it's just like, it's becoming more and more competitive every day that there's more layoffs. And, I'm aware that, it's an uphill battle, and I don't know about research, but I feel like there's definitely more product design roles, and sure, there's more product designers, but content is usually like the first folks to be let go. People still don't know what we do. It's not very respected. And so it's like, I feel like, and maybe I'm just being overly dramatic, but it is kind of the worst of the UX disciplines to be in right now. And so I'm just sort of stumbling through, and, you have to apply to things for unemployment anyway. So I'm going to keep doing that, of course. But I don't have a lot of hope, but I do have, I think, 2 interviews next week coming up. So we'll see. It's almost,
hey, at least you're getting some activity. Right?
Yeah, it's true. And part of me feels like the more, it's like that reverse psychology on yourself. The less I'm desperate and care about it and can come in with like, whatever, it probably won't happen, the better I usually do. And I know that's like maybe childish, but it does calm me to just go in there and be yourself. And that's really the best thing I can do. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking about content always getting the shaft with somebody, and it's like, y'all realize that without content you don't
have anything,
really have a product to design. You don't have anything to research against, like, but then again, I'm also have been saying for years, all product designers are service designers, except they're just channel designers, right? Or feature designers. And I think the entire profession and all of its sub professions, if you look at it that way, we haven't done a very good job of making a concerted effort to understand what our own value is and then communicate that consistently and well. And 2, I think that I'll just shorthand it and say, quote unquote, because tech, there's just been so much aggrandizing of the work that we do, which is important. But I think it's weird that people are called product designers. It's such a weird title for a digital software.
Yeah, I can see that.
And especially when, more than likely, even if you are a lead, you're probably working on a subset of features of the product. Maybe if you're at a startup, you're looking at an entire digital product, and I may be thinking too literally and too pedantically, but again, it's kind of like, how are we communicating what we do? How are we communicating the value of that? Do we all agree what that stuff is? No. So like, if we can't agree, how are we going to get anyone else to take us seriously?
Yeah. It's true. I guess like part of me thinks that I've been very naive and have sort of looked at UX and came into it even thinking this was some utopia and that this was going to be this like amazing space where people understood what I did. And of course they want to make things better for users. Like who doesn't? Like it's just felt like a no-brainer. I never realized I'd say this is especially true for content, but I certainly not only, that so much of my job would be advocating for my discipline and trying to teach people what I do. I mean, and it's exhausting. And there were people that like product managers, especially, that I would work with, and like, oh, I don't know what you do. So I'd tell them. And then like a week later we'd be in a meeting and I don't know what she does, but it's like, you don't listen. And there's Google, like people aren't making the effort. They don't really want to know that much. It's just like, can you help me or can you not? And how much is it helping me or not? And if I don't get what you do, at some point you're going to be laid off. So there's just always this like anxiety around that piece of it. And I don't know about you, but I never produce my best work when there's always this feeling of like stress and anxiety and like, do they know what I'm doing? Am I doing enough? It's really a shame. And I feel like this isn't, I know it's newer, but it's not that new of a discipline that people in tech don't know what the hell
not really.
UX design is at this point.
No.
So I just don't feel like that's an excuse. And I feel like I feel okay holding people a little more accountable for, I go and understand what you do. Like part of my job is to understand like what are the creatives working on and the marketing team and the product managers and what are the engineers doing? And let me have a conversation with you and find out what your problems are and like how I can help. Like that's my, go forward. Like at any job I start, the first thing is building relationships. And it just feels like that was never offered to me in the same way, unless it was other UX designers and researchers.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that for me, it kind of goes back to like, what's the motivation? What's the crap, what's the word? All I can think of is carrot, but I don't mean carrot. Like I kind of mean like carrot and stick, but what's the hell word? Anyway,
incentive.
What's the good incentive? Thank you. The good thing they get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. This is rough lately. What's the motivation? What's the incentive for all these roles that we're working with and casting a wide net, broad brushstrokes, whatever. The motivation and incentive is to ship.
Yeah.
Quickly and often. And quality isn't a part of it.
100%. I have heard, many times how content slows things down, and depending on what engineering team you're working with, that can be, a bigger or lesser of a deal. Performance reviews, it was, you need to know when stuff is 80% done and ship it. And I take that to heart. And I do see sometimes things aren't going to be perfect. And I did learn to go, all right, cool, this is good enough. And we'll find out more now. But sometimes it was just like, we're shipping garbage. And I knew it. I mean, and more often than not, that was
everybody knows
what it is. Yeah. And I don't feel good about it. I don't.
No, but not at all a devil's advocate thing. But like, again, it's the motivation incentives. They're not being paid to care about it.
No.
They're being paid to produce.
And so our incentives, our carrots, the whole system is, in my opinion, wrong and broken. And what we're working for is meaningless and doesn't matter. And, here we are. And I do think like, do I want to get back into that? Like, can I afford not to? There's that. And, but what does that look like? Cause that is just day in, day out. It's like, this is also my life. Like am I going to wake up in 40 years and go, what the hell was that? Like I did nothing that made a difference. I was, shipping garbage and, for money, really, at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah. I've got this talk from a long time ago, and part of it is, something along the lines of, if you're going to be in this profession, I get that sometimes your job is your job and you are just doing your job. But if you're in any of the human-centered related disciplines, I'm going to have to ask that you actually give a shit about the people that you're impacting. that's both internal and external. The sort of downside of that, as it plays out through lived experience, is you don't have a lot of support for doing that. No. So why do it is how it can end up for a lot of people. It's not everything. It's not everywhere. People have different lived experiences, but I would love to work with some people who take it seriously, that we should be impacting people's lives positively, reducing suffering, increasing dignity. That should be what we wake up and do every day. And it manifests as reducing friction and getting some work done or something, And I would also like, I think my biggest wish is that a lot of the people that we work with be a lot more open to being changed by what we learn from talking to customers about their experiences with the product or service, instead of so many executives, leadership position people saying, they don't know what they want. I know what they want.
1,000%. I remember working on something where we had research from customers, and they said, this is terrible. We hate this. This looks cheap. And the consensus was, well, it's going to be everywhere soon. All platforms are going to be doing this. So they're just going to have to get used to it, and they'll come back anyway. And I was horrified. I mean, again, I think I've been very naive, but that's the takeaway. How, but it's true. And I think it's made me.
Is that AI?
It was advertising. Yeah. Okay. But then there's AI. Jesus. Yeah. I think that's in large part.
We've got to have an AI solution because we're going to be expected to have one.
Whether it's good or not, whether it makes sense or not. And let's fire a bunch of people so we can, implement it, which I think is in part why I was let go too. Yeah. I think, what you're describing is exactly if I could find a role like that somewhere, and I get it's probably a big pay cut. And I'm like, you know what? Fine. Working on something where people were actually doing the work and with people who cared. There's nothing I love more than collaborating with great folks, and bringing my part to it. I mean, it is it's amazing and it's fun. And it's makes me get out of the bed in the morning and think I'm actually doing something that matters. I mean, that's, I would love to do that, but I'm having a hard time finding a place like that right now.
Yeah, I mean, it exists. Yeah. I know it exists. I've seen it. I mean, this is from a few years ago, but I did a project as an external person for Google, and we were doing the readout for the research, and there were a couple of designers in the room, and they were furiously taking notes, and the project sponsor said, "Can you stop for a second?" And we stopped with the readout, and she looked over and said, "What are you two doing?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we're just drawing up designs for how we're going to," and she said, stop. None of what's happening now is going to go into the product. Wow. What's happening now is to understand what other research we need to do. We're not making product decisions. We're trying to make better informed business decisions at Google.
Yeah, that's impressive.
So, and she's not at Google anymore. She left to do other things. This is a few years ago, but I do know that stuff like this happens at gigantic companies, at mid-sized companies, at small companies. Yeah. It's just finding those people, understanding the extent to which that they understand that they need you. Because I was again, another conversation of maybe I should be looking for a business analyst role, or, I'm looking for the wrong job title, but I can still do the same work and have an impact at a different company with a different job title. I don't necessarily know that that's exactly the right fit, but just, thinking in terms of like, how can I help? How can I use the skills that I have now? How can I find that place that allows me to have, like what you're describing, that collaboration?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I feel like it's gotten more challenging with all of the AI hype, in my opinion. And I have to feel like I have to go into all these interviews and say, oh yeah, AI is amazing. And I like, part of me is like, I do think it's interesting. And I personally, I do love writing for AI. I've had some of my favorite projects have been writing for Alexa skills and writing for chatbots. And it's fun and interesting, and like creating a bot persona and working on a style guide. And like, it's amazing. But where the turn that it's taken, I find frightening on many ethical levels. And also the skills I had 2 years ago are kind of obsolete now. I mean, it's like but I still feel like, I've got to go in and say, you can't say, oh, AI is, eating up all the water in the world, and like, we need to stop this garbage from happening. And so even like going in to apply for some of these jobs, I just like, it's that constant, and this is sort of a tangent from what you were just saying, but like, where do I need a job, and I also need to stand in my own integrity. And what does that look like? And what can I stomach? And to be honest, it's probably not a lot of it. If I'm being honest, it's especially content's being asked now to do a lot of like, can you do prompt engineering? The few content roles there are, like, write for AI. I don't know.
Well, I highly recommend being honest with yourself.
Yeah. It's the only way forward, really.
Yeah.
I think.
Because, I mean, ultimately, I think what, dipping into the world at large right now, what I think is missing from so many arenas in life is personal integrity. And I think to some extent, I'll just say, as an initial pass talking about integrity, it sort of doesn't matter what you're doing in life. If you have a strong sense of values and personal integrity, and you don't shift that stuff just to make a quick buck, just to please someone from a sycophantic relationship perspective, I want to see more of that. I think the downside, and something that assuming that I'm living as ethical a life with integrity as I can, which I know I'm not, but I try. Having personal integrity, and therefore limiting who I'm willing to share my skills with, has made me poorer.
1,000%. Yeah.
And more indebted.
Yes. I concur.
And I know that there's a Venn diagram out there where it's me and some company, and in the middle is, let's make some good shit. But I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
Because most of who's hiring isn't that.
Yeah.
With the exception of, again, like, let's pick on Nike now, because I have in the past. Everything I've heard from anybody in Portland who has done work for Nike is it always depends on the team you're working with.
I've heard the same.
Yeah. And so there are good teams doing interesting things there that are helping people. So these pockets exist. It's just finding your way into them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I hate to be so depressing on your podcast, but this is what's on my mind for sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, obviously yours as well, but
yeah. I mean, hello everybody. This is what personal integrity and honesty looks like.
I mean, and honestly, like it always has been my MO, and to my detriment many, many times. I have ruined relationships and lost jobs and lost family member. I mean, because I say the thing that people don't want to hear, and it's kind of too late to stop now. But it is, you know, I do think like, oh, am I being stupid? You know, my partner's laid off as well. Our health insurance is about to end in the end of the month. And you're just like, should I be doing anything to get like, you know, and like, what are my other options? And I think it's like really getting clear about, I don't know if it's just like spreadsheets, how long you have, runways, you know, I'm like, I'll go work at Trader Joe's. I will do whatever I have to do. Like, and knowing that to me, I think is preferable at the end of the day, than doing something where I feel like I am hurting people, hurting the environment, making, you know, we don't have a lot of time, you know, time left. It feels like to make some of these changes. So, and I also do feel that I'm somebody that I don't want to, but can take that hit. Like some of us just have to go, like, I'm not going to sign up for this. And I know there are people that will fill my spot if I don't take that role, but like, unless and until enough of us say no, nothing will change. It absolutely will not.
Yeah. 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 My suspicion is that there's going to be a lot of people over the next year who are going to come to quickly realize just how much is at stake for them. And there's going to have to be a decision point, the extent to which they're willing to risk loss.
Yeah.
In order to create a sane environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that thinking in those terms, talking about that stuff is a surefire way to make sure that I don't get a job, because even though, you know, 90% of your day job at any corporation is internal politics, people think, oh, politics doesn't exist here. Even though the company is, you know, tithing to their new overlord.
Yeah. The cognitive dissonance with some of this is just mind-blowing to me. And I just don't know. I've said for years, like, how do some of these people sleep at night? Like, and maybe it's just really well. Yeah. That goes back to my naivete. And I have a lot of anxiety. Like, I'm up all night. The littlest thing I might've said that hurt somebody, you know, I'm just built differently, and I don't regret it, but it's also like, I think I've underestimated a lot of people in that way.
Or overestimated.
Yeah.
In
absolutely.
a way. Like that they care, that they want to help.
Because they say they care, and then it takes a minute to realize, what's coming out of their mouth hole is absolutely inaccurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are we going to do about it? That's what I say.
I mean, I think like...
Someone tell me the answer. Come on, Alex.
I know,
you got it. Go.
I think that first is having the conversations. I do think it's stuff like this. I think it's connecting with people and, you know, in your community, slowly changing hearts and minds. Like, you know, maybe some people are, you know, younger folks are like feeling it, but they don't necessarily know it yet. Or a lot of times it's the younger folks saying to the old, like, hey, this is complete bullshit. Like, why you people shouldn't be doing this. But I think that it is about community and connection and all the things that like make us stronger together. I mean, there's a lot of, talk. I'm a big follower of Mike Monteiro, a tech union, like unionizing, having these like, which I don't know that I'll ever see in my lifetime, but I think having that conversation, I didn't read Ethan. I think his name Ethan Marcotte wrote the book. Did you read it?
You need a tech. You need a tech union or something like that. Yeah.
So I and some of these groups like No Tech for Apartheid, a bunch of folks from Google and Amazon that said we're not going to build, weapons and AI that is committing genocide. And so like becoming aware of what's out there and joining some of these groups. And I don't know, that's what I've found, and following people that I respect that are speaking out. I think it's huge. And I think sometimes, I know I can speak for myself, only underestimate how much power there is in just like connecting with one person, little by little.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, while you were explaining that, I started thinking about like, it is that stuff. And I think it is also being seen doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Because it kind of goes back to modeling behavior, right? So it is, and I'm not harsh on what you said at all, but it is having conversations like you and I are having. It is going and talking to people and sticking with that one PM who's sort of on the fence of starting to do things right and trying to help them get better at that if you can. But it's also like, I think it's talking out loud about it and publicly about it. Because that's the big thing I see is like, I had a friend who stayed at Meta for a long time, probably longer than they should have. And part of the reason they stayed is because they felt a personal duty to stay there and attempt to keep the company from hurting people as much as they could. But it was work that they couldn't talk about out loud. It was work that was sort of segmented away from the main purpose of Meta, of Facebook. And so being seen doing that work, it wasn't an opportunity very often anyway. And so I think like that just ends up being, if you do it alone, if you're doing behind the scenes work, like there's a place for that. But if you're also not then doing it so that other people can see that you're doing it and maybe they take the chance to do it too, like I think it's just a recipe for burnout. Yeah. And that's what I've realized over the past, I don't know, maybe 2 years or so, is that I've spent the bulk of my career trying really hard not to be known at all.
Really?
Uh-oh.
That surprises me, just because I know.
Did I not do a good job at that? What?
I don't. Well, yeah, because I feel like I don't know who first introduced us, but someone said to me, "Oh, you need to chat with Matthew." Obviously, this was years ago, and so I felt like you were always. I mean, maybe it was just in the Portland area, you were always somebody that was like the person to go talk to, especially about UX research and yeah.
All right. Well, apparently, I didn't do a very good job of hiding. But there have been opportunities in my life to do bigger, more visible things. And I have passed on that because I liked doing the behind the scenes one-on-one conversation stuff. And it was really only in like it started a little bit in 2018. I did a couple conference talks, and I hadn't done any for almost 10 years. And then, pandemic-y stuff. But so wonderful to be at the point of saying pandemic-y stuff, even though I know that it's still impacting people. But I think where I'm trying to go with this is I think I should have been a lot more intentional over the past 7 years or so of being a lot more vocal about this stuff, a lot more visible about this stuff, that, hey, I want you to take your work more seriously. I want you, and this is probably pushing it a little bit too far, but like, I want you to sign this harm reduction commitment. And this is what drives you. It doesn't have to be the only thing that drives you, but like, commit to this. Commit to finding ways to reduce harm in all the work that you're doing, both systemically and individually. Like, because those are things that I've cared about. Those are things that I've talked about one-on-one with people, but I've never really, I hit that point of like, I don't know if it's anxiety. It's probably anxiety, shyness, whatever, which is anxiety. And I feel ashamed a little bit that I haven't done that. Because now I feel like I've gone past, I think I can go back, but I've gone past the point of where I'd be helpful and where I think I'd just be like, all right, listen, idiots, get your shit together.
Which would be fair, to be honest.
Which would be fair, but wouldn't be helpful. I mean, it might be helpful a little bit, but it would make me feel better. No, a little bit, but not for long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just have this frustration built up, and some of the frustration is at myself. Because I've been in this profession long enough that I probably could have done more to make our profession be taken more seriously.
Do you feel that I have this sense though that I thought we had more time, and it's changed so quickly and so quite recently that, and maybe again, like to your point, we should have been doing it and saying these things more earlier, and in ways I have tried. I've never had a lot of power in an organization. I mean, my highest level is a senior. I'm not, I'm an individual contributor. But I thought we had more time before it was like very clear that it is not about making things better for people. It's about making more money for the very few people at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's always been that way.
Yeah.
Again, not everywhere, but my guess, this is my working theory this week, is that the quickness with which things have changed is maybe a little bit pandemic, but not as much as it might seem. I think what it's at, where it's at, is you look at all the people who are in these leadership positions, who are running these companies or these mega companies, who are in positions of power in government, and you look at how old they are. And statistically speaking, just from an age perspective, they're running out of time. And now you've got this critical mass of old people who are trying to get their stuff done before they die so that they can set stuff up for future people that they care about or things that they want to see happen. And so there's just been this rush over the past 4 years to really claim, this is just another colonization 7.0. I don't know whatever number we're on now. And it's basically like, hey, if you want to keep existing in this capitalistic structure, you need to get on board with what they're doing. And you need to produce things that help them get richer or help them succeed in their visions. Otherwise, you're of no use and you're out. And that's kind of like where my head's at right now. And I know that's very black and white thinking, and I shouldn't succumb to that. But it's also just kind of how my brain works. So I'll work on it.
But I think it's true. I mean, I think that it's like the question is maybe the answer maybe to the question is not even there at all. It's like a completely side thing that is more innovative and creative. And I don't know what it is, but it's like, I don't think we're going to fix this in this system. It's toxic. It is a malignant cancer, in my opinion. And it's not like, this is not, business as usual is not going to be, what I'm trying to say is it's not figuring out how to do business as usual better or a little better that's going to change anything. Mm-hmm. I think it's just going to be more of the same or prolong what is inevitable in capitalism. So it's like, how do we become a part of something new or something different? Or, because we do have skills and passion and ideas and experience. And it's just like, what does that look like? And how does it pay you to live? Right. And I don't, maybe it is a hamster cafe for a while, or I have another colleague who is talking about opening a cheese shop similarly, like do something like just completely different. And I don't know, but maybe it isn't, it's just not. Or I think a lot about like some small, more mission-driven organizations. The Greater Good Studio pops into my mind in Chicago, and George A. and Sarah Cantor there are like, that's where I could see myself working somewhere like that with a small group of great people. And they're not making probably millions and millions. I hope they are, or certainly not billions of dollars a year, but they're doing work that they love, that matters. Maybe it's just doing more of that or building those things. And yeah, of course, how do you find clients and what does that look like? It's easier said than done, but I don't know.
I also don't know. I think the right frame of mind, even though I just said sort of the opposite about my friend who stayed at Meta for far too long. I think the right answer is to stay within the system, not to try and get it back to its default setting, but to guide it to where it needs to get to, rather than letting a room full of people, it's bigger than a handful, but not a lot of people, make the decision for us.
Yeah.
Even though I would, in some respects, very much like to hashtag van life and just stay on the move, be off grid. I don't think that that's actually a healthy thing beyond would be a nice vacation. But I don't know on the practical day-to-day finding a space to do that work. I don't know exactly what that looks like. But I feel like giving up on it and saying, well, there's nothing I can do, even though that's the way it feels right now. today anyway, is not the right thing.
No, I mean, absolutely not. Especially if you're somebody who cares, it's not going to be a fulfilling life. I just think like where are the other avenues, you know? And I think about, is this, like I said at the beginning, like, is this a point where I need to retrain into something? And there's some interesting programs on like sustainable landscape management and landscape design. And I'm really interested in when I hear about stories about how they're rehabilitating rivers in places and removing dams and climate justice. And is there something there that I can go be a part of, that I'm not going to give up what I see as the work of making the world a better place for people and, you know, caring about what that looks like and how I can make a difference, but it might not be in corporate America anymore.
Right.
It may, but is there another avenue, you know? And I might not be using my content skills on a day-to-day basis anymore, but I don't know.
I mean, regardless of what job you're doing, at the very least, you're going to be writing every day.
It's true.
You know,
it's true.
But yeah, I mean, hey, you know, not trying to get you back into Oregon, but U of O has a great landscape architecture.
So does Portland Community College has a really, and it's affordable. It's like a sustainable landscape management or landscape something. I actually just talked to a guidance counselor yesterday. And so I think that, move back to the Portland area is imminent. And I'm, and if I, like, this all could change if I actually get a job in the which I will still be applying to and looking for.
Of course.
But that I do think, learning more about that. And also there's an interesting program. You mentioned older people about like design for aging in place. There's still design related or adjacent things that are needed. So I don't know. It might be the next thing, but it does feel like a really weird time. It's just, I mean, but I really appreciate what you said about being visible, doing things visible, and speaking out. And I think it's not enough to just hide and, think you're doing the thing. If you can, I think we all need to be putting our neck on the line a little bit. I think you're right. And that's how we find each other too. And that's how community grows. And that's how we realize we learn, I like about what people are thinking and doing, what's possible, or hearing people's stories. I mean, it's powerful. Yeah.
My perspective is if you don't speak up, you don't get to contribute. You don't get to be a part of what things look like, and therefore you lose. Yeah. And if you do speak up, you might lose, but you also might gain or might stabilize or whatever gaining looks like. And so there's actually, in my mind, less mid to long-term risk in speaking up, where there's, for a lot of people, no short-term risk for staying silent. Yeah. But you'll pay for it later.
Yeah. It seems like the way to do it. It can seem like, just don't rock the boat. Right. And I've definitely had experiences where, I remember I was at Facebook and we were working on something to get users more followers. They wanted a specific behavior. So if a user took a behavior, we would then push followers, like fake followers, to them so they would continue to do that behavior that we wanted. And I kind of just like, I was new, and very unfiltered, which I'm not really that, but I just like, it rose up out of me. And I was like, that's manipulative. We can't do that. Like, I was completely stunned that, and I was like, how did I miss that this is what we were doing? And, the room kind of was all virtual, but the room went silent, and the person who was leading this, kind of never talked to me again. And it was awkward and really weird. And a few days later, the engineering manager, who I really, really loved and respected, he was like, it's great that we can all be honest and say the thing. And, and which I didn't really realize how wrong what I had done was until he wrote that to kind of smooth things over. But, and it was like, we were going to do that anyway, no matter what I thought. But I don't regret doing it now, especially because it's like, well, I have a hard enough time sleeping at night. So knowing that I'm saying the thing that is true, but I also knew at that moment that I was going to have to leave that company. And it took several more months for me to find a new job. But I knew that like, there was no way I was staying here after that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've never been very good at biting my tongue about this stuff. And even when I haven't said anything, I've still had people say to me, you don't like that idea? And I'm like, what do you mean? I didn't say anything. They're like, yeah, but you rolled your eyes face. When I said it. Like, yeah. Because I don't have a poker face at all. Right. Like, what was it? Maybe a year into my very first job doing this stuff, the company sent out an email to everybody and said, here's all the metrics for this month. People are spending an average of 17 minutes on the site. And I accidentally, air quotes, clicked reply to all. And I said, is that 17 minutes of, wow, insurance is amazing? Or is it 17 minutes of, I can't find what I'm looking for?
Absolutely.
And like 10 minutes later, I was in my boss's office and he said, so the only reason I'm not firing you is because you're right. And that's sort of when I started to understand. It still took me a while to get there, but really start to understand how to be right strategically and tactically. Not that I'm always right, but, and I think, like what the situation you were describing, you publicly shamed that person.
Yeah. And of course, not on purpose, but absolutely
not
did.
On purpose, yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's why I'm like, I am always, for most things, a big proponent of, I'd rather have 12 one-on-one conversations rather than one conversation with 12 people.
Yeah.
It's a much faster way to uncover hidden agendas, get alignment. Eventually, you're going to have to all come back together again. But it's more work short term, but longer term, it's way less work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. But I also think, like, I mean, if you're saying the truth and we all like, why do we have to like, walk on eggshells for people? Like, it's not efficient. It doesn't like it's just like when you realize, oh, we're really not here for what I think we are. We're not here for the user. We're here to make sure that so-and-so doesn't feel bad and the person in leadership, this, that, and the other, and you don't want to say and I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I think what you said was great. I mean, I remember once I had to do, it was for an IVR and I was doing research because no one else could do it, or it was like, we were really scrappy and I'm like, I'll do it. And so then I, interviewed a bunch of people and then presented this, and it was terrible. Like it wasn't working right. And it was painful to watch, but my reaction was like, but like, this isn't shameful. We know what's bad, what's wrong. Like, why is this, why are you, and they're all, and they're all like, oh God, it's now so terrible. And I'm like, it's not terrible. Like I saw it as a positive, and I just think like, am I, of a different planet? You know what I mean? And let's like,
I mean, yeah, you are.
I think so too.
I live there too, but
there's a few of us here.
Yeah. not enough to have full coverage on, household chores,
Yeah.
but yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. Anyway, hi.
Hi. Well, I'm happy not to be
Hi.
alone on this planet, I got to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of one of those things. It's like, you're not wrong. Everyone knows you're not wrong. But the thin skin, the ego driven decision making, I saw a client burn through $25 million trying to launch a new product.
Oh boy.
And then they canceled it because it wasn't going well. And the person who was the project sponsor was irate because no one told him, except I told him. And that's why he fired me from the project.
Unbelievable. It's just, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And, he's still there. All the other people who were internal, they've been pushed out. Because again, it goes back to the motivations and incentives.
Yeah. Oh man.
The goal isn't to make a good product or service. The goal is to enrich a handful of individuals.
Yeah.
And honestly, it could be both.
This is true.
We could have both.
We really could. And maybe it's not, as many billions, but I mean, no one needs that much money, of course, but it's not.
I'd be happy with like 4 billion.
I know.
I'd be fine. 3 even.
I'd even take a half. Half one would be
okay.
But yeah, it's wild. But well, I would like to work with you somewhere because it sounds like it would be a really fun.
We would make excellent.
I think so, and I want you to tell me the truth. I love working with researchers. I absolutely love it. It's so much fun. It's just such a treat. It's not, I don't always get to because they're sometimes spread kind of thin, but my God, it's some of my favorite people are researchers. I think there's a lot.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to work with me because of how I work. I take the Tom Sawyer approach to things where I'm just like, sure is fun painting this fence. And I get people to come over and help me because it makes it less boring for me. And also like a friend of mine and I did a project for HP several years ago, and we were doing the readout and there were 26 people on the call. 25 had helped us build it, the deliverable that we'd come up with because of how we worked on it. And we got to the end, there were no questions.
Wow.
I've never had a readout where there were no questions. But because everybody
was there,
knew there wasn't a big reveal. They knew what was happening the whole time. And that's just how I prefer to do things because it's a little more effort, but ultimately it makes it easier.
Yeah. Research is the best. It's so interesting. It's like, at first I thought I was going to get into UX and do research. That was what attracted me. But I just, you realize quickly that researchers have a lot more degrees and specialities. And like my background was in writing. And so it just kind of made more sense to get into content. And I do love it. I mean, but it was research that I was like, what is that job? How do you do that?
Hey, my background's in writing too.
Well, you use it a lot as a researcher too.
Yeah. I mean, I was a tech writer before I started doing this stuff. So it was, and I don't have any accredited education, but I have training from the people who wrote the books before the people who write the books today. So I do have an education, just not formal,
Yeah, I'm a boot camp person. I hated boot camp grad, which I just did it at the right time, and there were jobs, and so, but I think that and a bunch of transferable skills, and just like, I'm very scrappy, and and a lot of it just makes sense. I think a lot of UX is intuitive. Obviously, there's still a ton to learn, but but
Oh yeah.
but there's something about it that was just like, of course, it really like, it's like a fish to water or whatever, it was kind of how it felt for me.
Yeah. Well, I think to me, it kind of comes down to like, where are you applying these skills? Because I see not all, but a lot of people who come out of with PhDs who come out of research programs who really struggle to do research in the tech environment. Because they have that academic approach and they need to either be completely in charge so that they can define how the research works, or they need to figure out how to adapt, and they have a hard time adapting.
That makes sense.
So well educated, but now when it comes to apply it in a different, not medium, but a different context, it's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. My background was in acting and theater. And so I always felt that like a UX team or just a wider cross-functional team felt more like a film set. And everyone is here to do the one thing that they do really well and love to do. And we're all here to collaborate and have fun and create something great. And so that was kind of the energy that I went in with and just thought, let's make something cool,
And then you realized, oh, it's not like that at all.
Or it might be to start and then you present it and everyone says no because no one will buy it or whatever. But
right. And they know how to do your role better than you do.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
All right. Let's shift gears. It's time for 7 plus or minus 2 questions.
I love it. Ready? I'm ready.
First question. And there's no guardrails on any of this stuff. You can go wherever your mind takes you with these. What's one thing that you would change about your profession?
Oh God.
However you interpret that.
I think if I could, there's a lot of things I would change about it. So I'm trying to come up with the one thing. I think right now, if I could wave a magic wand, it would be that people in power, people in leadership understood the value of content and what it actually meant. And, and maybe it's a long answer. Maybe it's like, because they do know and don't want that because it's not going to give them the most money. It could be more of that, but that a third of my job wasn't explaining what I do and advocating for a seat at the table. That it was just like, oh yeah, of course we need the content person here. The amount of times I've heard there's too many people in the room, so the UX designer will come and I think research gets that as well. Like we'll tell you later. I don't ever want to hear that again.
Okay. What do you wish people cared more about?
Definitely like other people, the planet, animals. And I would say, like, I would sum it up. I've been reading a lot of, and listening to the Upstream podcast, and I'm obsessed with Jason Hickel and the idea of degrowth. And so I would say, I wish people cared more about degrowth and what's after capitalism, because we are either going to, explode into, or whatever, however this will melt down. This is not sustainable. So I feel an urgency to change, to make change. And I think that if more people cared about that, we could do it with less damage, long-term damage.
Okay. What is the best meal you've ever had?
The best meal I've ever had. I would probably say, and I don't even remember all of it, but I was flying into Rome to go to attend an acting and voice workshop on Stromboli, actually, but had a couple of days in Rome, and met with the guy who was leading it. He was Italian, he was Roman, and he took us to this restaurant, and it was like some woman who, like, you'd never know about this if you weren't with someone who lived there. And she just like brought food to the table. I think there were like 4 of us. And I just remember it was my first Italian meal, like real Italian meal. And it was so simple. And I just remember the artichokes like blew my mind. I mean, it was the most beautiful produce prepared so simply. And I don't know that I've ever had anything like that since, but, and I couldn't find it. I never could, not repeatable, but that was amazing.
Right. Is it almost to the point of, did that really happen?
A little bit, yeah, because I don't I was like, what else were they? I just remember the artichokes, but there were other like little plates of all kinds of vegetables and other, I don't even remember, but it was unbelievable.
Nice. I like that one. What do you wish you'd done differently?
That's very, like, anything specific to attach to that one, or just what have I done differently?
No, I'm kind of cruel that way.
I think that I do have regret about when I graduated high school. I was, for a lot of reasons, I was just like, I need to get the hell out of Michigan. I wanted to study theater and only theater. And I got into some really great colleges, and I didn't go because I wanted to study theater. And I wish now that I had at least tried, like, gone to one of those really good schools. I think it would have I feel like I missed a lot of learning that I'm, can still do now, but just, I can't go back and redo that experience at 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if you, and this is the paradox is, could you appreciate it?
This is, I know. And I think about that too. Like, I wasn't in the mind frame to do it. I didn't have, my mom said to me recently, like, imagine if you had parents that you could have talked to that would have helped you make that decision. And I was like, yeah, that would have been helpful. I think I wasn't in an environment that was there to guide me into, like, just go to, like, Carnegie Mellon. It's a good, and then see if you can do theater later or whatever. Like, I just didn't have the help. So I understand why I made the decision, but I still wish I had done it differently.
Yeah. Okay. So last question. Okay. Imagine it's a year from now. What do you hope to not be carrying anymore?
What do I hope to not be carrying anymore? I am this year started a class, a year-long writing class, and it's basically a generative year with word counts, and it's not about writing instruction, but it is designed to get a book out of you in a year. And I've had a few books, like, floating around, but there's definitely one that it's like been weighing on me to tell this story. And what is this a thing? Can I do it, for a long time? And I hope at the end of this year to have that behind me and go, I not only can I do it, I did do it. And here it is. And that's no longer haunting me.
Ooh, haunting you.
Yeah. I have a lot of haunting.
That sometimes that can be really good motivation.
Yeah.
Well, I think you can.
I think so too.
Assuming you can. I mean, if I can, you
so can. I haven't read your book, and I didn't know.
I
you have 5 books. Oh my God. Okay.
Because in 2020, December of 22, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I realized mid-sentence, as this happens, an epiphany. No, I know it's epiphany, but I just like to say epiphany. That really what was stopping me is that I wasn't making the time to do it. I wasn't taking that time for myself to make it happen. And so I said, all right, I guess this is 21. I always get these dates wrong. But I said, every year for the next 10 years, I'm going to do 2 books a year.
Whoa.
and they don't have to be perfect. I'm going to make them as good as I can get. Last year only did one, but this year I've got 3 on deck.
Wow.
So
and are you self-publishing, or how is that? Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Self-publishing. Some might say control freak. I just say I don't have the patience to go through the traditional publishing route.
Fiction, nonfiction?
Mm-hmm.
Both. Okay. That's amazing.
Picture books, poetry.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I'm more interested in sharing stories that I'm interested in rather than trying to find a niche like romantasy. That's romance fantasy, whatever. And like just really going all out in that niche because that's what's selling right now. Like I'm not against romantasy as a subgenre, but I don't want to do that kind of writing. And all the ones that I have on deck for this year, they're all collaborative, which has its own challenges for getting things done, but it also means I have support in getting things done. So
congratulations.
So
That's
see.
Really cool. I think I'm impressed. And I have the hardest thing for me is accountability. So I think for me, having this class and the structure, I found out a couple of years ago that I have ADHD and obviously always have. And so getting structures in place that help me produce what I need to do has been absolutely life-changing. So hopefully I can finally get this out, but
it'll happen.
That is so cool. I'm going to go check it. Where are they? Where are your books?
Today's sponsor.
Yeah.
It's just MatthewOliphant.com.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and it's, like I like all the picture books. I've got 3 picture books. The poetry book is, a lot of the poems are good. Not all of them are. It's okay. And there's a novel, which I wrote more for myself because I know a lot of people are going to read it and be like, huh? But that's okay because I was trying to do something very specific with it and I accomplished that. And if it doesn't resonate with other people, it's totally fine.
I love it.
So yeah. And this year it's going to be, if it all comes together, 1 picture book, 1 fiction book, and 1 nonfiction book. So
good for you. That's really cool.
I also have ADHD.
You do?
And
I didn't know that. I mean, how would I know that? But okay.
ADHD and autism. So
ADHD. I've realized, and after I found out I was diagnosed, that all of my favorite people were neurodivergent. Just, I don't know if just attracted to that or like didn't feel as judged, or people that just said the thing, kind of like we talked about before. I just feel so much more comfortable. So huge fan my best closest friends, my partner, lovely people.
They're all weirdos.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the weirdo. I love the weirdos.
In the best way.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. Well, let's stop talking.